What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another movie review. I'm Chase Lee, and the movie I want to take a look at right now is Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, this one comes from Sony Pictures in association with Disney slash Marvel Studios, and this one is directed by John Watts. He is a returning director. He directed Spider-Man Homecoming as well, and this one, is directly after the events of Avengers Endgame, and we follow Peter Parker. He's back in school. He's hanging out with his friends. He's going after MJ as a love interest, and him in his class and a couple teachers, they go on a school trip to Europe over abroad, and they go to a bunch of different cities and they just kind of explore a little bit. He's taking a break after all the events that has happened in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. And so when he's there in Europe, things start to happen. There's a bunch of creatures that arise from the earth, whether they be made out of rocks or water or fire. And Peter has no idea what's going on, but of course he's Spider-Man. He has to take care of it. So a lot of people don't get hurt and a lot of buildings don't get destroyed. And so he starts to try to fight these things off. He can't really do it. And there's this kind of like masked hero that kind of comes in and starts saving the day, starts blasting off all these creatures and villains. And, this hero has a cape and a fishbowl as a helmet. And the news outlets deem him as a man of mystery, also known as Mysterio. And so this one is played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And so Peter Parker kind of teams up with Mysterio, as Mysterio is working with Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and they try to figure out what is happening, what has brought Mysterio here all of a sudden, and why are these creatures here. That is all I will say. That's within the first 10-15 minutes of the movie. It sets up the movie, and then from that point forward, that's when stuff starts to roll in. So no spoilers here. I won't even spoil stuff in Avengers Endgame in case you haven't seen it. So this will be spoiler free. You are safe. Let's do this. So before every movie review I do on my YouTube channel, I typically will say like, oh, I saw the trailer. This is what I thought of the trailer. And then I jump into the movie and what I thought of the movie, because it could be different from what I thought of the trailer. I might hate a trailer and then really love the movie, or vice versa. This is one of those rare cases to where I didn't see any lick of marketing for this movie. I didn't see any trailers. The only thing I saw is maybe a couple pictures from Entertainment Weekly. That's about it. So I had no idea what it was going to be like going in terms of story, tone, how different it was going to be from Homecoming, how different it was going to be from Avengers Endgame, carrying it on from the major thing that happens in that movie. Like, it's like I had no clue, and I love jumping into movies like that because I love this franchise. I love this universe. This is the 23rd film in this franchise. It's the one that ends Phase 3. It is the button, the end stinger after Endgame. What was gonna happen? I gotta tell you, I like this movie quite a bit. Now, when I see it a second time, I might love it even more. But I will say, for me personally, it might. I don't really know how I could compare it to Homecoming because it's a vastly different movie. But I will say that I quite enjoyed it, and I think when you're following something like Avengers Endgame, it was kind of light, refreshing, but still having the risk taken and the emotional weight to it that you want for something following Avengers Endgame. So, jumping into it, with director John Watts, what I think he does pretty well in this film is carry over what he did in Spider-Man Homecoming, which is the tone of Spider-Man. It's cheeky, it's fun, it's funny, it's action packed. It's this kid that's dealing with high school drama and relationships, and then also dealing with the threat of the world on his shoulders. There's a lot going on within this, but also John Watts has the added pressure of carrying over Peter Parker's character from Avengers Endgame and what happens there. Because there's a lot of emotional baggage that weighs Peter down throughout this entire movie. So there's a lot of stuff to juggle, and also still carrying over the tone from Spider-Man Homecoming. I think John Watts did a pretty good job in that regard. There's really nothing more to say about that. He was a great director on the first one. I think he was a suitable director to just carry over what he did in the first one. I actually hope that he continues on and finishes his trilogy. Story wise, it's very interesting because if you really think about it, as soon as they get to Europe and stuff starts going down, it's a pretty straightforward movie. There's really nothing too complicated about it. It's like once they're there, this threat starts happening and Peter has to take care of it. There you go. But with Mysterio's character, he is a fascinating character because you don't know what he is doing. You don't know what his motives are, and I think that's what makes it so kind of unpredictable and fun about this entire adventure is that you have no idea where the story's going to go, even though it's all taking place in Europe and you think it's pretty simple, which in hindsight it is. But all the little twists and turns that they take with like Mysterio's character or the story overall, it's pretty fun to watch. And it keeps the story kind of lively and kind of fresh and really kind of fast paced if you think about it. Because, when they're there in Europe and kind of walking around and, defeating all these enemies and like they're still in Europe and stuff, it can get kind of stale and kind of repetitive, but they don't do that. And they keep it fresh by throwing as many kind of twists and turns at you as possible. And they make sense for the story. And it's just, it's an enjoyable watch and it keeps it really kind of fun and bizarre and unpredictable for sure. But Mysterio's character is really really just interesting, and I think with all the twists and turns, it makes sense for his character. And I think Jake Gyllenhaal portrays Mysterio very well. He's a very charming individual. He sways Peter into a lot of stuff, and I think given what happens to him and what from the comics, like it totally makes sense. And Jake Gyllenhaal delivers that in spades. He's a great actor overall. He's one of the best in the business. He has a lot of fun with the role, so I have a lot of fun with the role. And I think the risk taken with his character and the turns that happen, I think paid off for the most part. And I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming, but it made sense to me. The one thing I didn't really like about the one of the story elements is that Peter Parker does something with Mysterio that I get that like Peter Parker is a teenager and he's naive, but he's not dumb. And there's a decision that he makes that kind of irked me because I'm like, this doesn't really feel like Peter Parker. This feels really out of character, given what has happened to him and him being a kid. It's just like I get why the writers decided to go down this path, but at the same time, he's not dumb. You'll get what I'm talking about when you watch it, but there is a story element that I did not really particularly care for, and it is the kind of like turning point for the rest of the movie to kind of play out, and I got kind of irritated at it. So that's like the only real flaw I have with the overall story. This to me feels like one of those like comic strips or comic books that you would find in a comic book store. You kind of find like you've read all the Spider-Man comics. And you're like, hey, what is this one? This looks like a fun little read. Like it's fun. It's like you read through it. It's like, man, that was a nice little adventure, a little Spidey adventure. And then you get to the last two panels, which would be the equivalent to the end credit scenes in this movie, and then you're just on the floor because you have no idea how to process all that information. So, yeah, story-wise, very unpredictable, fun, another Spidey adventure. And to kind of carry over that into like kind of some of the performances and some of the kids, the actual like high school element and the relationships that Peter has with Ned or Peter has with MJ, it's awkward, it's delightful, it's very high school-esque. They talk like high schoolers, they feel like teenagers, and so all of that carries over super well. And his relationship with Ned is just it's a really just warm friendship. You just want to hang out with him. And then the relationship that he tries to strike with MJ is just a great progression of her character, because in the first one I didn't really care for her that much, to be honest with you, and she really kind of found her footing with MJ in this movie. Like, she's still blunt, she's still sarcastic, but her walls are starting to break down a little bit because she's letting Peter Parker enter her life. And so there's a difference in her character that's advancing quite well, and I really enjoy that. And of course, everyone else with like Flash Thompson, played by Tony Revolori, great character once again. You feel bad for the guy, but he's just a nice little funny addition. Betty, she's really great. Her and Ned have this great running joke. The teachers are great comedic relief with Martin Starr and JB Smoove. Really great stuff. Peter Parker. Tom Holland, I think, is the best incarnation we've had of this character. Personal preference, his movies may not be like the best Spider-Man movies I've seen, but he is the best Spider-Man I have seen on screen. So that beats out Toby, that beats out Andrew. He is the best one in my opinion. He has the wit. He has the great comebacks. He's funny. He's likable. He can do the Spider-Man pose, and he can be convincing in the action scenes. Like, he can be convincing as a kid, even though he's in his early 20s. He is a well-rounded Peter Parker. But in this movie, he has that added pressure of following the events of Avengers Endgame. Because what happens in Endgame directly affects him. Him probably more so than any other character. And him being a kid and dealing with loss at his age, and to see Tom Holland's performance and that growth of his character was really kind of touching. There is some really great eye acting from Tom Holland. His eyes tell the whole story. There's a couple of times where he's talking with Nick Fury or talking with Happy, and he's tearing up, or like he's got redness around his eyes. Like this really bothers him that he's dealing with this at this age, and he's got all this responsibility as a superhero. So he feels lost as a person. He feels lost as a superhero. And there's a lot of other adults in his life, whether it be Aunt May, Happy, or Nick Fury, that lift him up and tell him, you need to decide what to do. Do you want to live like this forever, or do you want to grow from this, take what you have learned from certain people in your life, and become that superhero, that great superhero that everyone thinks you are? And it was just really just touching stuff, just kind of adding on top of what has happened in Endgame, and it was kind of beautiful for his character. So Peter Parker, fantastic stuff. And even with his interactions with Mysterio, he has really great chemistry with Jake Gyllenhaal. I actually hope they do a movie together. But then again, Jake Gyllenhaal can bounce off of anybody, but he works pretty well with Mysterio as a foil. I personally prefer Michael Keaton as Vulture, but I think Jake Gyllenhaal as a Mysterio is a well-done villain, especially to interact with Peter Parker and Spider-Man. The action set pieces, speaking of Mysterio and Peter Parker, I think are pretty well done for the most part. Some of the CGI is definitely CGI-y. That's definitely not a word, and someone's going to comment down below. I can't take you seriously. You just said CGI-y. But some of it does look a little, standout-ish, where it just doesn't really flow well with the scene, and you can definitely tell it is a special effect. And there's nothing wrong with special effects being in movies, obviously, but you need to blend it a little bit more into the background and into the environment and make it feel a little bit more palpable and real within the action set piece. Sometimes in some shots it was a little too overdone, where it's just like you can definitely tell that is a special effect. But I think for the most part, whether it be because Spider-Man is a full CGI character in this movie when he has his full suit on, whether it be him fighting Mysterio or him and Mysterio teaming up, it's just there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot more movement to this action. There's a lot more energy to this action than Homecoming. It is very urgent action, and it is very fun to watch. It doesn't get tiresome, and it feels like a Spider-Man comic book, and that is the best compliment I can give it. So some blemishes here and there with the CGI and green screen, but not enough to bring it down, in my opinion. I mentioned it before, and I'll say it again. It is a brisk movie. It's just like Homecoming, in my opinion. I think the Spider-Man films have some of the best pacing out of all the MCU films, and I think it's the enjoyableness of watching Tom Holland as Spider-Man. It's just I've always dreamed of like a Spider-Man being this, you know. Accurate to the comics in terms of being a teenager, acting like a kid, and being immature sometimes, but also having this responsibility on his shoulders. There's a lot to go, back and forth with the complexity of this character, and I think just watching Tom Holland kind of be comfortable in this role, it's such a joy to watch, man. Like he is having a blast. So the last thing I wanted to talk about are the end credit scenes. Now I'm not gonna spoil anything, so don't worry about it. But I want to let you know, just prepare yourself. As being a end stinger in the end cap to Phase 3, let me tell you something. Because there's two post credit scenes, I just want to let you know that you stay throughout the entire thing. The first one is like the mid one where it's after like the main credits. That one, I will just say this, sets up some pretty interesting possibilities for Peter Parker and basically Spider-Man as a whole, and where the third one will probably go. It's fascinating. I'm excited to hear everyone's reactions. um, the second one, there's gonna be a lot of theories online about the second one and where this whole MCU is gonna go. And I'm excited for it. That's all I'll say. It is very ballsy to see that they're going to go down that route. I'm curious to see how they're going to pull it off. And I'm excited. Because the thing is, with 23 films deep into this like entire universe, you need to make sure it's something completely different than Thanos. You don't want to do the Infinity Saga all over again. It's not going to bode well with audiences. You need to do something so radical and so different, but still unpredictable at the same time. Even though I just saw the end credit scene, it's like I think I know where they're going, but I still don't know where they're going. That's awesome. Like, let's just jump into every single movie and just be completely surprised, and I am there for it. So, another great installment, I think, for Spider-Man fans, MCU fans, post Endgame, in Phasing 3. This is another great film in this character's kind of filmography. That character being Spider-Man, and besides that decision that Peter Parker makes that I'm a little iffy on, and Mysterio being, not like the best villain, but a capable villain for Spider-Man. Given what his power set is in the comics and stuff, playing those power sets with a teenager, it makes sense to me. But I still prefer Michael Keaton as Vulture. That one's fantastic. But it's still a worthy villain. It's still a fun movie. It's a very enjoyable movie. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. But I will give it my highest grade I think I can give before I get into the A's. So until I see it a second time, I might love it. But for right now, my first viewing, I'm going to give Spider-Man Far From Home a B+. I like it quite a bit. I think you guys will if you guys are into this franchise and or the MCU as a whole. So what do you guys think of the movie, or have you even heard of it? Comment in the place below my face and let me know. And that will do it for this review, guys. I'm Chase Lee, and tune in next time for whatever I review next. I will see you guys later.